Welcome back, it's Wednesday, and that means another exciting episode of Can It Take a K26? I'm your host, Captain Xavier, and we have some interesting contestants for you today. Our next contestant is the Nerf Firefly. No idea why it's called that. The Firefly was originally released in 2009 as part of the Dart Tag series. It was re-released and recolored a couple of times, one for G.I. Joe, one for something else. I have no idea. They were never particularly good. It holds 10 darts, which is fairly high capacity for a revolver, especially at the time, and it features a reverse plunger, which of course does not bode well for the series, but maybe this will be the exception to the rule. Let's open it up and find out. Alright. Well, sure enough, it is a reverse plunger and a really small plunger tube for the size of this blaster. That is just anemic. Looks like it's the same size as a Maverick, honestly, maybe even smaller. However, and this pitiful little spring, good lord. However, there is plenty of room in here. And unlike some of the previous blasters with small springs, the catch mechanism does have is fairly open. And I'm fairly certain that catch spring is not supposed to be mangled like that. We're definitely going to replace that. If nothing else. Catch system is kind of weak looking, but we're going to go ahead and give it a try. Because I really don't care if this thing blows up. Do we have a small section? As I'd hate to use a good oh, this one might work. Alright, let's give it a prime. Oof. Wow. Ugh. So there you have it. After a bit of finagling, I did end up putting the heaviest catch spring I've ever put in a blaster into this thing, and it is working. I was not able to put the full-length K26 in. I put a short piece and its original spring in. A full-length one wouldn't fit and still have enough compression for it to prime, but the small section I put in plus its original spring does in fact work. It has a mean prime on it. It's actually kind of uncomfortable to prime this thing at this point. Couldn't tell you how much more power it has, but it definitely has a considerable amount of additional power. But it in fact works. Let's move on to our next contestant. Our next contestant is the Nerf Hyperfire. The original Hyperfire, not the new fully automatic one. This one was released in 2014 as part of the Dart Tag line. And it features a direct plunger, so it makes it a decent candidate. It also holds 10 darts, just real simple top prime. Not generally a good sign for taking K26, as that tends to mean a bent plunger rod, but we're going to take a look and see what it does. Like the Maverick and the Firefly, it rotates on trigger pull, which is also a less reliable system, but what are you going to do? Alright, we are going to break it open and see if it can take a K26. Oh, I just don't like anything at all about the inside of this blaster. So sure enough, bent plunger rod, which is never a good sign for K26. But there's a first time for everything. So the K26 will fit in the plunger tube, if just barely. So that's something. Let's go ahead and cut ourselves a section of K26 in the appropriate length. And down. All right, got it buttoned up. And it actually takes it just fine. Primes... Oh, maybe not. Prime's fine. It's actually a fairly solid design. Air restrictors are in the cylinder, as it was with most of these older blasters. You might take those out and maybe brass the barrels if you really felt like it. But there you have it. The old dart tag Hyperfire can take a K26. On to the next contestant. Our next contestant on Can It Take a K26 is the Nerf Firefly Rev 8. So named because it has a system that lights up whenever you pull the trigger to light up the glow-in-the-dark darts that it came with. And of course, Rev 8 because it's a revolver that takes 8 rounds. The Firefly was originally released in 2005 as part of the N-Strike series, thus does have a little bit of tack rail, sling mounts, dart holders. It's a bullpup design, which was kind of interesting at the time. Making this blaster very popular for shell mods. People like to add other blasters onto the front of it. It's a nice looking stock. The blaster itself was not anything to write home about. Primes in the back. Had a decent power really for what it was. But we're gonna see if it can take a K26 and if that will make it any more powerful. Alright, let's see what we've got here. Well, of course, we've got all of the electronics, which are fairly nifty. A really simple switch. If I end up using this for anything else, I will probably replace most of it. But the flash bulb is actually fairly impressive, really. That might be something that I might be able to use on, say, the muzzle flash on ire. Something like that might work quite well, actually. But that is for another day. Today, we just want to find out if this thing can take a K26. So let's get at the plunger. It is screwed in, which is always favorable for this particular thing because of how much extra force we're going to be putting on the internals. Alright, let's take a look at what we've got. The question, is, as usual, is going to be whether or not there is enough room. So, unfortunately, the plunger tube is too small to take K26. That was a easy answer. I'm sure we could find something in here that would suffice. Well, surprisingly, that is a no to the K26. I was actually very surprised because the reason it can't is the plunger tube is too small, which, given that the plunger tube is large enough on blasters like the Nightfinder and the Firestrike, but is too small in something this big, was a bit surprising. I was able to do a spring upgrade, though I'm not sure why anyone would bother. There are so many much more fun things to do with a Firefly. For instance, what I'm going to do with this Firefly. So, you'll have to stay tuned for a different episode for that. But, on to the next contestant. Our next contestant is the first non-Nerf contestant to be featured on Can It Take a K26. It is the Air Zoomer Wind Attack 8. I have almost no information on this because, unlike Nerf, Air Zoomer does not have a fabulous wiki page that I can look things up on. It may have been released in around 2012 based on what minimal research I could be bothered to do, but don't quote me on that. I chose this blaster because I needed another high-capacity revolver to be the fourth contestant, and I did not want to use the Busby line because I plan to use those in their own episode. So, we're gonna find out if this Air Zoomer can take a K26. Interestingly, the upper half of the shell comes off. And without having to go too much farther, I can say no, this is not going to be able to take a K26 because that is an absurdly small plunger tube. Look at how much space there is in there, and that tiny little plunger tube. That is just pitiful. But for consistency's sake, let's go ahead and see if there's anything we can put in this. Well, I've got this, but there is no way that is going to be able to get enough compression. Alright, well, there you have it. The Wind Attack 8 from Air Zoomer cannot take a K26. All that trouble, and all I ended up with are hands. It looked like I spent my afternoon with Eccentrica Golumbits. Alright then, let's recap. Alright, for those of you keeping score at home, here are the results. That was a somewhat surprising yes to the Furyfire. A equally surprising yes to the Hyperfire. A surprising no for the Firefly Rev 8, but a yes to a spring upgrade. And a thoroughly surprising no to the Wind Attack 8. And a no to a spring upgrade. This thing is just tragic. Anyway, if you have any comments, questions, suggestions for future episodes, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching. If you're still watching, congratulations, you've made it to the bonus round. I recently reached 5,000 subscribers, and to show my appreciation to all of my fans, I'm decided to give away a Nerf blaster from my Etsy page. Here's how you win. Earlier in this video, I made reference to Eccentrica Golumbits. The first person to contact me via my Etsy page and tell me exactly who Eccentrica Golumbits is will win their choice of blaster from my Etsy page. Thank you all for subscribing. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for all of your ideas and all of your comments and all of your support. Tell your friends, share my videos. Let's keep this going. Thank you. See you in the next video.